Hello, everyone. Welcome to this presentation on the Global Syndicate for Mobility Cybersecurity. I would think that you will find it quite interesting because we are looking at cybersecurity from the mobility perspective. Let me introduce myself and Colin.
Good day, everybody. My name is Colin Dillon. I am currently the Chief Technical Officer at the Automotive Parts Association, but also delighted to be a founder of the Global Syndicate for Mobility Cybersecurity.
And I'm AJ Khan. I am the President of Global Syndicate for Mobility Cybersecurity. And together with Colin, we thought that this is something which is required, which is a need out there because many people do not understand mobility cybersecurity. So we initiated GSMC. As we move forward, you will see that this is a unique organization focused on specifically mobility cybersecurity. And it is an independent and impartial, not-for-profit global organization focused on advancing mobility cybersecurity by bringing together all forms of transportation of people and goods through unified security, privacy, and cyber safety transformation. So basically, what we are looking uh, at global standards and regulations in the mobility space, public and private partnerships around cybersecurity initiatives, academic research and cyber innovation in this area, and very important, developing the cyber workforce for the future of mobility cybersecurity. So basically, we are looking at these four areas. First of all, we are enabling an alliance for cyber secure global movement of goods and people. So think about it. Uh, There are so many different entities involved in the global movement of goods and people. There are, trains, plane, other mobility ecosystem. So there needs to be an alliance which looks at the cyber secure requirements of all these movement. Then we have to look at building a dedicated, safe, secure, and trusted global mobility ecosystem by enabling worldwide collaboration and leadership in cybersecurity. The other aim of GSMC is standardization of technologies used across different sectors and different countries. And finally, we want to build trust by developing a non-competitive environment where ideas can be exchanged and where collaboration can happen to secure the global mobility ecosystem.
And as AJ was just kind of describing, if you break down each segment of movement of goods and people, we've come to the conclusion that we're looking at potentially 10 segments or sectors, which includes the automotive, marine, aerospace, eVTOLs, which are, electric or they can be non-electric, vertical takeoff and landing devices, the rail systems, loop and tunnel, which we feel are separate to rail, micromobility, mining, submerged vehicles, and then space. And again, space should be expanded to also include satellites and devices that are currently being set up. Now, the one thing that is common throughout all of these 10 segments is data. The collection and transferring of data to and from all of these forms of mobility is what has to be protected and has to be secured. And that's one of the reasons that GSMC was formed. But we're going beyond just looking at the different segments and those companies or organizations that are within it. No movement in advancements in society happen without government coming together, academia coming together, industry coming together, international regulation organizations coming together, and obviously bringing security and technology in this conversation. This industrial revolution 4.0 that we're currently going through with 5.0, I would say just behind our shoulder, it is pivotal and it is critical that we look at having these conversations broadly. This isn't a one-size-fits-all scenario. It isn't a North American versus Europe versus Asia conversation. the Global Syndicate for Mobility Cybersecurity believe in a strong partnership with multiple levels and institutions and organizations to try and help make a difference. And so we've already begun to identify, and we're delighted to say that we have individuals and companies and organizations that are from countries like Israel, from India, from the UK, from Germany, from the US, from Japan, Dubai, and others are joining as the word is beginning to spread about GSMC and the important work that is being done or is being planned to be done. More and more jurisdictions and geographical locations and countries are wanting to come on board, because we have to collectively come together on this. You know, beyond data being the most important, valuable resource that's being shared on all of these different segments and sectors in all parts of the world, hardware and software now is beginning to be used. If you're working with radar technology, there is more chance that you are using a similar type of radar or exactly the same type of radar in different segments, which has never happened in the past. And so hence, again, some of the importance behind the work that GSMC is doing.
Colin has already mentioned that data is the most important component of the mobility cybersecurity ecosystem. But if you really think about it, mobility cybersecurity is very different from IT cybersecurity. Normally, we think of cybersecurity from the IT perspective. But when we are looking at it from a mobility perspective, there are different elements which you have to consider. One is the traditional IT cybersecurity, but then you have to look at the manufacturing cybersecurity, which is the OT cybersecurity. You also have to look at the product cybersecurity. So your vehicle, your plane, your satellite, how secure that product is. And then you are looking at things like supplier cybersecurity. So your supply ecosystem in the mobility space, that really needs to be secure. You also have to look at communication cybersecurity. So how are you communicating with your plane or your satellite or your ship, your submarine, whichever place, whichever ecosystem, whichever sector you're looking at. And then finally, of course, there is data, which Colin mentioned. So that is what we are looking at over here. We want to look at the modern digital nation and the digital technologies that include all of these sectors, that enable all of these sectors, and make sure that this whole ecosystem is secure. Because obviously, globally, there are over 50 billion products which are now out there, and more are coming, and we need to secure them. All of these mentioned, these underlying technologies enable them: autonomous mobility, cloud, IoT, V2X, or communication. When we say V2X, vehicle to everything, that would be your vehicle can be a plane, your vehicle can be a train. So you have to look at it from the vehicle to everything communication, your digital infrastructure, which is the base of all of this ecosystem. Your cyber workforce is very, very important, because again, as I mentioned before, we think of cybersecurity as IT cybersecurity, but when we think about mobility cybersecurity, there are not many people out there who understand this area, and we need to work with them. So these are some of the things which we need to look at when we are looking at the mobility ecosystem, when we are looking at the digital ecosystem for mobility cybersecurity.
And one of the things that AJ and I talked about when we decided to pull this all together was the importance of documenting and doing research and supporting the ecosystem when it comes to cybersecurity. And so one of the first undertakings that we took was to pull together a report on securing the skies, which really was to broaden the conversation to say, look, whether they're eVTOLs or whether it's aerospace, the skies have to be secured because there is a huge push happening here in North America and other parts of the world where we are looking at delivery by drones, as they say. And now that space, which is several meters above buildings and below the flight paths, that now is becoming a valuable piece of real estate in the air, and we need to make sure that we are securing it. But not only the sky and the devices that are going to be flying through that segment, but also the vertiports or the airports, the places where you and I go and buy our tickets and have our tickets processed. And so something that we both learned a few years ago as the co-chairs of the APMA's Cybersecurity Committee was the introduction of the Aerospace Council of Ontario on the request that the work we were doing was maybe years ahead of where they were. And so it is a known fact that there are hundreds of millions of lines of code on your average car today. There are over 100 ECUs on the average premium vehicle built in 2020 and onwards. And so, somebody gave a stat of, there are more lines of code on a car than there is on a major, piece of aerospace aircraft like a Boeing 747. So securing the skies really is to go into detail, to ask the questions, to bring in voices and comments from that segment and that sector. So we're making sure that the message is getting pushed across about the importance of cybersecurity in particular segments. And the one that's currently in progress is stakeholder mapping. AJ?
Yeah, so stakeholder mapping is, I think, a very critical part of what we are doing, because we want to have a database, we want to have a directory which is applicable for all companies, all organizations who are part of this global ecosystem focus on mobility cybersecurity. So who are the major players as far as cybersecurity is concerned in the automotive sector, in the aerospace sector, in the marine sector, in the space sector? So all of those need to be brought together and looked at from their expertise point of view and their vision point of view. And I think when we have this completed, this would be a great value add for everyone who wants to explore the mobility cybersecurity ecosystem.
Well, that kind of brings us to the end of our presentation here. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to the Cybersecurity and Identity Summit 2022, who have asked AJ and myself to present today. We hope you have a better understanding with regards to the GSMC organization. We hope you understand the importance that is currently being implemented through the work of the GSMC. And we're both open to questions and happy and delighted to be a part of this. So a big thank you from myself and from
Thank
AJ.
you.